The Dresden Files. Factions at play. I've been wanting to bring you guys more lore videos for a while, but with the move I kinda had to take my foot off the gas for this type of video just due to the level of effort. Now that I'm moved in and comfy, let's go ahead and jump into the Dresden Files and explore just how many people want to kill each other in this epic urban fantasy series. If urban fantasy is known for being a bit smaller and more contained than its older-timey counterpart, the Dresden Files is the one exception that breaks that mold. There are so many different players on this board, it's gonna make your eyes cross a bit just trying to keep track of them. But without any further ado, let's jump into the major players within the Dresden Files, starting with the White Council. The White Council is essentially the supreme organization of wizards who watch over all other wizards to make sure they're kept in line, as well as combating other evil forces that are at play within this magical landscape. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, grand organization of wizards. Must be completely good guys. No, they can kind of suck. For example, the White Council enforces their laws of magic, and I know what you're thinking. Laws of magic sounds a bit cliche, and you'd be right, it is. But what's different about the way the Dresden Files handles its laws of magic is the fact that the White Council is willing to kill children who violate these laws without knowing it. A bit of a dark turn for this organization to have, but one that actually gives them a pretty unique angle when it comes to these organizations of wizards in fantasy. Like seriously, if a child who can use magic accidentally does something without realizing it, they could be murdered for it. Jesus Christ, dude. Now, to enforce their will upon the land, the White Council uses a group called the Wardens, or essentially warrior wizards acting as a policing force. And if the White Council is forced to go to war, these Wardens can flip a switch and quickly become an organized and effective military. You know how in most organizations it's generally considered good to keep your policing and military separate? White Council feels no need for that. The White Council is, of course, headed up by a group called the Senior Council, the leader of which is given the title of Merlin. Is it a bit cliche that a group of senior wizards is led by someone called a Merlin? Yes, but that's the vibe of the Dresden Files, and it makes me immensely happy. I love it. Don't criticize it or at me. I love this series. Now, if you are a wizard who chooses to operate outside of the White Council, that doesn't immediately mean you're on their to kill list. There are fringe wizards, as I refer to them in my mind. I forget if there's an official term, but I don't think so, who go about their daily life, obey the laws of magic, and as long as they don't step on the toes of the White Council, generally they'll be left alone. This is where our boy Dresden of the Dresden Files comes into play. That being said, it's not the most comfy place to be in, because essentially there's this supreme force looking over your shoulder at every move you make, and if you step out of what they consider to be the line, they can kill you. So while some fringe wizards are quote-unquote White Council approved, many do try to avoid them at all costs, knowing that if they get caught doing certain things, it could mean their life. Great, we're off to a happy, fun start. Let's go ahead and jump into the vampire courts. Often at conflict with the White Council, these vampires, of course, hunt humans, and the White Council generally has a more protective attitude towards mortals, as you know, they're these soft little mushy creatures that can't really stick up for themselves in this wider landscape. And with that being these vampires' cattle, there's some conflict already just inherently at play. Now to be clear, the White Council doesn't go about protecting humans on a day-to-day basis. It's more wizards like Dresden himself who have affinity for humans and will do what they can to stop them from becoming vampire and other supernatural creature poo. But the first major vampire court we're going to talk about here is the Red Court. Now it's important to note that each vampire court has a different type of vampire operating within it. The Red Court, think of your more beastly vampires, the ones that are absolute nightmare fuel and became popular in the late 90s, early 2000s for vampire lore. They may be able to wear the skin of a sexy, attractive human, but once their true form is shown underneath, it's generally considered to be one of the most foul beings to come across. Truly disgusting, horrific creatures. Up next we have the White Court. These are generally your more sexy vampires. They actually don't even feed off of people in the traditional way. They feed off of emotions. These are the ones that kind of just prey on people and often not even the lethal sense, though they still do kill humans regularly, and the White Court is not your friendly neighborhood vampire. And don't write them off as weak just because they aren't the ones who are going to regularly tear off people's heads to feed. No, the White Court vampires are still supernaturally strong and can do away with humans easily, especially when well fed. They are nothing to be with. It's also arguable that the White Court is the strongest of the vampire courts due to their numbers and just positioning within the world of the Never Fae and supernatural goes-abouts. I also just want to take a moment to make it absolutely clear, White Court of Vampires, White Council of Wizards. Because I've seen people accidentally interchange these, and by God, I had to retake this so many times when I was making this video, where I kept saying White Council when I meant White Court. Finally, we have the Black Court vampires, and if we've already done away with the beastly vampire and the sexy vampire, you know what this third one's gonna be. It's your classic Bram Stoker's type vamp. These are the ones that have all the things associated with them that you would know if you've read Bram Stoker's Dracula. And to match along with that lore, there's much fewer of them. While the Black Court vampires in a 1 versus 1 are considered the strongest of the vampires, there's so few of them politically they don't have as much sway as the White or Red Courts. So sure, if the Black Court vampires suddenly decided to up their numbers by a huge amount, they would be maybe the biggest threat of all of vampiredom, but no, the White and Red Courts, due to their superior numbers and more aggressive plays in the field, tend to be the ones that you have to worry about the most often. There's also an offshoot of the Red Court, unlike the other vampire courts. Sorry, you're just not cool enough, White and Black. This is a group of people who have been half-turned by the Red Court vampires, meaning they were bit, but never consumed the blood of a human being to complete their changing into a vampire process. People in this situation join up with the Fellowship of St. Giles. Why St. Giles? Well, because he's the saint of lepers and outcasts, and if you're kind of a half-mutant vampire who doesn't fit in with people or vampires, you join this group because it's the only one you got. Think of these guys as the rebel vampires who work against the fully formed Red Court, because the Red Court is so evil and awful, and these people don't exactly appreciate having their lives taken away from them in this manner. Super cool group who becomes a pretty important player. We won't get into more because, you know, spoilers. And if you want to know more about the exact capabilities of these people, you're gonna have to hit like and subscribe and wait for a future Dresden Files video where I cover the creatures throughout the series. And if this was just a typical urban fantasy, we'd stop here. You'd have your good, you'd have your bad, and those would be your factions at play. But this is the Dresden Files, and there's a lot more we need to delve into, starting with the Fae. We all know what the Fae is in general. Don't trust fairies, they're tricksy. And in the Dresden Files, as is tradition, the Fae is split into 2 courts, summer and winter. These 2 courts rule different parts of the Fae and Never Never. Now I know what you're thinking, what's the Never Never? The Never Never is a spirit world. It exists alongside our own as a sort of alternate dimension, but its shape is not the same as our world. The Never Never is much, much larger than the mortal Earth. Perhaps maybe going on forever. There are of course ways to travel between this Fae-ass place and our own, but we don't need to get into those because we're talking about factions here. The Winter Court is ruled by 3 powerful women: Lady Winter, the Winter Queen, and of course, Mother Winter. This clan also has a Winter King, but we aren't going to spend much time on him because he's not important. There also might be multiple Winter Kings. It's weird and vague, and we don't know a whole lot about that. Could learn about more later, or not. There's also a Winter Knight, a mortal chosen to be the champion of the court. Now the Summer Court, would you guess it, is ruled by 3 powerful women: Lady Summer, the Summer Queen, and, as you probably called, Mother Summer. They also have a Summer King and a Summer Knight, cause yeah, of course. These 2 courts are definitely at odds with one another, and do play into just the general power grabbing that happens within the Dresden Files consistently. I wanted to get into the general monsters of the Dresden Files as well, and talk about what beings happen to be roaming the night, but after attempting to dive into all of them, I realized that's a video on its own. So for this video, just keep in mind that Jim Butcher seems to have opened up the monster manual as a whole, and just decided to embrace whatever he comes across. If you've heard an urban legend or a myth of something that goes bump in the night, it probably exists here, and we'll get into that at another time. Seriously, it's not just the aforementioned vampires. There's shit in the Dresden Files I didn't even know about till I cracked this world open. And when I say Mr. Butcher brought in all kinds of supernatural, that includes outsiders, and he's gone full-on Lovecraftian here. Here, our own reality ends, and things from outside our own universe begin to creep in. A constant war is raging within the Never Never to keep this force of complete and utter destruction at bay. It's actually something the Fae courts previously mentioned handle. In fact, one thing all these factions can agree on is letting those pieces of in, because they are a game over for everybody. That's right, the outsiders, as far as we know, are a complete game ender. These are Lovecraftian beings in the sense of universe ending. You've probably noticed something here. We have wizards, we have fae, vampires, monsters of all kinds. Where the hell are the humans? Are they just total cattle and nothing aside from that? No, we come back swinging with our own forces. My favorite being the Knights of the Cross. These are holy knights wielding swords bearing nails from the crucifixion of Christ. They are some badass dudes, and Michael, the one you're going to become most familiar with if you're starting the Dresden Files soon, is my personal favorite. Think Paladin, on steroids, but they would never actually do steroids because they're paladins. Take note of how their power is based off of artifacts. We're gonna get into that more in a minute. Now, in contrast to that, there's the Order of the Blackened Daenerys. Now, in one of my favorite bits of magic for this whole universe, this organization revolves around 30 silver coins. And for those of you who know your Christian mythology, you know what 30 silver coins represents. These were the ones given to Judas to pay him off to betray Christ. Now there are fallen angels attached to each coin, and those who come in possession or direct contact with these coins essentially act as hosts for these fallen angels to work through. Obviously, this is one of the most dangerous groups just because of what they revolve around and what this allows into the world. So there are constant plays to try and take back coins and make great trades for them. It's really interesting and leads to some of the best storylines in all the Dresden Files. Now, next up we have the Chicago PD. For those of you who didn't watch my Before You Read the Dresden Files video, largely this series takes place in Chicago. Now, no, I'm not about to say that all of the Chicago Police Department knows of the supernatural forces that are at play. In fact, almost none of them do. But when you are constantly being called into bloody situations as a police department, and there's vampires running around eating people, occasionally there's going to be things that go beyond your typical understanding of the world around you. That's where Chicago Police Department's Special Investigations Unit comes into play. And no, not all of them know what's going on, but we do have a select few officers who learn, and they start calling in our man Dresden himself to handle these problems. This one wizard who offers his services and abilities quite vocally is now known to the Chicago Police Department as someone to call in when things start hitting the fan in a way that you just don't comprehend. Just make sure when Dresden rolls up into a scene, there isn't some valuable tech that needs to be protected, because wizards in this world start actually messing with all technology, just their energy around them. I don't know, just don't have a pacemaker near a wizard. Now, don't forget that the Chicago PD also has to deal with regular-ass criminals in the day-to-day, and another major player within the Dresden Files is a mafia, headed up by John Marcone. Now, actually being aware of a lot of the supernatural around him, John Marcone is someone who's making eager power plays within this universe. And this is actually one of my favorite dynamics to the grand sprawling chessboard that is the Dresden Files. Having this chaotic element where it's essentially a human being running a group of human beings aware of what's going on and trying to take advantage of the situation. That's super cool, and it's played to masterful effect. It may sound strange that a bunch of criminals that are humans could actually be a factor at all here, but Jim Butcher made a great decision, and that's to never actually forget the lethality of bullets. Yeah, a wizard could still be killed by a shot to the head, and even vampires are slowed down by a slug to the chest. So if you have a group of gangsters who start becoming more aware of and learning about this world around them and invest in the type of things that might benefit them, that's a chaotic element that adds a lot of dimension and depth to this landscape. Now, there's a ton of smaller groups folded in with these larger ones, like a group of werewolves called the Alphas or a group of thieves called the Church Mice, but I don't have the time to get into everything here. It would be an hour-long video, and I need to eat at some point today. So we're gonna go ahead and move into a couple of the other notes I want to add on top here that I find to be really cool things within the Dresden Files. Nuggets that really help you understand why these factions are always so aggressively at each other's throats. The first thing is that not every opponent Dresden comes across is going to lie within one of these factions itself. There are just nefarious players here as well. Whether it's a rogue wizard, a necromancer, a vampire who doesn't want to align with one of the courts, people can come from all different walks, and they don't need to be a part of these grand schemes. In fact, some of my favorite villains Dresden's had to deal with don't involve any of these major players. Now, one thing though everyone seems to clamor for in this universe is artifacts. Whether they're part of a group or on their own, artifacts carry weight within the Dresden Files. And it adds a lot to the magic system, whether it's a small thing like a wizard carrying a blasting rod. Blasting rods are essentially just ways for wizards to f things up faster, or a piece of grand significance that has a lot of belief in it, which makes it more powerful. So artifacts can kind of fall into two groups here. Things that are specifically crafted by magical folk to do a certain purpose, and just other important artifacts from history, religion, mythology that because of their essence, the belief in them, have a power of their own. Hence the Knights of the Cross and their carrying of swords that have nails from the crucifixion of Christ in them. And there's even another character who has a noose that hung Judas. That's f***ing cool. And those swords, kind of some of the most powerful things in existence, hence why mortal men wielding them are still nothing to turn your back to. Now, if you've noticed, within this world, Jim Butcher seems to take existing ideas and concepts around vampires or other supernatural entities or items, and just utilize them within this own world to magnificent effect. And that's where the Dresden Files in terms of lore is strongest to me. Butcher didn't come up with a lot of wholly original, just from himself ideas. Instead, he went to what is tried and true and put his flair on top of it, and doesn't really rule out anything. We deal with everything from Norse gods to Greek gods, Christianity to just weird magical things that are part of an urban legend. There doesn't seem to be any gatekeeping for what's possible to occur within the Dresden Files, and so these factions are warring with each other constantly, and one of the most complex magic systems, just because of what's let in, you can read about. Not complex in the hard magic system way of thinking. It is a bit hard in some ways, but there's a whole lot of wiggle room there. Just complex in the fact that there's so many factors and forces at play, and there's such high stakes constantly. It's phenomenal motivation to keep the storytelling and the power dynamics between all these different groups interesting and dynamic. But let me know what you think of the Dresden Files factions down below. If you could join any of them as a member of their cause and you would get what they have and what they talk about, who would you want to join up with? Let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and let me know what series you'd like me to tackle next. I've been having my eye on some First Law lore setting deep dive type things, but with how dry and bare bones First Law is at times, it might be difficult to do. Also looking at Forgotten Realms, and man, I just picked up some John Gwynne books, and there's a lot you could talk about there too. Let me know in the comments down below, like and subscribe if you have not already, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreon, Jasmine Yee. Hope you're having a great one. I just got done with this video and I'm very happy with it right now. Feeling good. I hope you're feeling just as good. Peace.